she's gonna give me the high
Like I
side.
said, I remembered I had it, and then I just couldn't find it, and
Do we have to have it? Is there a
I came across it the other day.
Yeah, bandstand.
Oh, okay. Bandstand what? Okay, that's it.
So it's written on the email. Okay, okay. Well, good morning. This is our meeting of the Trees and Green Infrastructure Committee. It is Friday, June 11th. And this is our first live meeting back at City Hall since February of 2020. So we're not the first committee meeting to start back live. That honor goes to Dick's Environment Committee. But you all, I think that worked really well last Friday, so it was, hopefully we'll be able to.
It worked well. The team here is working well. It supports all of this.
Yeah. And so we actually, because we don't have anyone participating remotely today, we are able to go beyond an hour. So, but at the same time, I'm hoping not to go more than an hour and a half, just because of staff time and we all have busy lives. But we're not limited to an hour, so that's another advantage to being here in person. So let's do the roll call. So you may want to wave your hand in case someone watching at home does not know who all of us are. Dick Byrne.
Here.
Joan Flaherty.
Here.
Andrea Hoffman.
Here.
Liza Trey.
Here.
Bob Van Horn.
Here. And
Liz Lingo is joining us today. And we are absent Katie Downs and Elise Burns, but we do have a quorum. The minutes were sent out a couple days ago, thanks to Joan, who does a really, really thorough job of capturing our meetings. Andrea had one correction that I actually already made on the electronic file and on the printouts I have here, and that is she reminded me that the length of the hose at the school was not 250 feet, it was 350 feet.
And it's good workout when you have to roll it
Right.
back in.
Yeah, right.
No, it doesn't fit on a wheel, which is
Wow.
why it is now, can we talk about, okay.
Yeah,
I
you
was
just-
requested by the school to get it off the ground because they moved their heavy equipment in there. So Liz came up with a brilliant idea, which is I took a big storage plastic thing, rubber plastic, and drilled holes in it. So there is now a box, a bin about this big. And it's still a pain. I mean, we wound and wound and wound.
But upper body workout that way.
So be ready. It's Dick, right? You're on next.
I do next week.
So
Yes.
just make sure when you turn, okay, for me, this is from my experience.
Yes.
When you go to turn off the water, for me, I thought I had it closed when I was kneeling and turning it, but you have more strength if you're standing and you can turn it because it's difficult.
Good
And
to
make
know.
turn it off, empty out all the water out of the hose, and that can take about 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, wow, okay.
just stand at a tree and continue watering
As long
the
as
tree.
it goes to a tree, we're good.
Right, exactly. We thought of that afterwards because we didn't realize it was going to take
realize,
so
yeah.
long to empty out 350 feet of hose.
Right.
And then it's a lot lighter. One person should hold it, and the other one, and I was the one with the upper body workout guiding it. I gave Andrea the easy job.
I had a thumb workout because
Right.
what you want to do is squeeze
As you're
as
going.
you're going because there's going to be water all the way
Otherwise, it
through.
takes up way too much room and it's not going to fit.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. And you have
So-
to, yes. So that's,
Some-
yes.
all these
Good
logistics
tips
one
to
doesn't
know.
think of.
And don't pull it because it's a cloth hose, and once it rips, that's
Yeah,
it.
we're
You
done.
know, make sure that.
And this was the hose you got?
Yes,
right?
yeah, thank you very much. It's an awesome
absolutely,
hose.
yes.
It is, but you know,
Yeah,
I've worked
that's
with those,
great.
just,
That's-
careful about, so when we get to that part, I do have a few suggestions.
Okay, yeah, well, let's
Yeah.
save the rest of that
Yes.
for when we get to that. But are there any other corrections on the minutes?
No.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. For correspondence, I actually just got handed a letter 5 minutes before the meeting started from Kitty Cole. You may remember a few months ago, I read, oh, there's Katie, great. Katie Downs just joined us, welcome. And so, I'm not gonna read her whole letter this time. It's somewhat similar to the last one she sent, but she does say, with climate change and the comfort and health from trees, Rehoboth should be planting a lot more trees. And she is willing to show us many areas in the city where the city has removed trees and not replaced them. And she wanted me to forward this to who is in charge of city parks and trees. So Liz is the lucky recipient of that. But I think we all agree with Kitty's sentiments. In terms of an update, I actually think that I'm going to defer some of my update to those of you who are working directly with the school trees, because the biggest update since the last meeting is that we have indeed, thanks to Bob's generosity, have a 350-foot hose, and that we have a plan for watering those trees at the school. And I think it's wonderful that you know, you have so many people who've stepped up to help. I think that's great.
Well, on that topic, Liza was with me. We watered on Wednesday, but I've signed up at least 3 more people. She was there. Anytime I see somebody walking by the trees, I grab them, and I've signed up 3 additional people. So hopefully, I'm going to be, I guess, in another week or so, I'll put out a call for July.
Okay.
For watering. And right now it's Wednesdays.
So it's Wednesdays.
Yes, it's Wednesdays.
So when we were out there, we noticed that one of the oaks already had some insect damage. And I work in my yard with arbor tree care, and with permission, and if it's not impeding on, city policy, I was gonna call them and ask them if they will volunteer with their truck when they're in the area to pull a hose and fertilize those trees every 3 months. And then I worked with a new tree cutter that I am just doing backflips over. It's Cypress Tree.
I've heard about them, yes, okay.
Awesome!
Yeah.
Because they did a massive job on Columbia and 2nd,
Right.
and I lived
Saw it.
right by there. And I was walking by every day, and I was just sitting and observing. They took 4.5 days to do the most magnificent job of clearing a yard. The trees that could be shaped were all shaped. They were balanced. They were even to prolong the life of the tree. So again, I just signed a fairly large contract with them for myself because I need only climbers, because I have a 150-year-old oak, and he's going to give me 4 climbers, and he said to do the appropriate job, first tree cutter to say this, I need 2 full days.
Wow.
Thank you. So again, because of the contract I just signed, I wanted to approach him. Our trees will be 45 minutes to trim, but some are ready. They should be starting to be shaped. I'm going to ask him if he will come out and take a look.
For these are the school ones?
The school
Oh, okay.
trees.
All right,
And
yeah.
then maybe in the future, and again, if allowed, if they can put a little plaque like fed by Arbor Tree, cut by, and I'm not sure if you have to run that up to somebody to get permission.
I think it'll have to be run up by
Yeah,
the school,
Yeah,
the facilities
right.
manager.
Yeah, I would think.
I'm just, but I'm throwing that out there. I could do the legwork on that, and I
Well, we
think
can
that
work
they
on
will
that.
say yes.
Okay, great.
I will get in
Yeah.
touch with the facilities manager.
And the only other, in fact, I'll let her do an update next month when she's here, but Elise is on the tree tenders, the joint venture we're doing, or joint project we're doing with Rehoboth in Bloom. And she, I guess, you're on tree tenders as well, right, yes. So, in fact, do you want to give any sort of update about where you all are and what you all have been doing?
Well, we have weeded and mulched 14 trees on Monroe.
Munson.
Munson. And in Grove Park, we have 8 trees that we care for. And Robert came and joined us, and we mulched those trees. We also weeded. And I just recently watered on Monday morning.
Okay.
10 gallons of water per tree. Because I wasn't sure I'm never sure whether or not it's going to rain fully, but
We're going to get some today.
the hose reaches easily to all of those trees. They seem to be doing okay. There's one tree with a little bit of dead leaves at the very top, so it's just sort of worth watching to see what happens. Because they're maples, and I don't know, I guess they need a little bit of extra looking at, maybe. No?
Not any more than any other tree.
Well, they're not infested, I know that, so that's
good.
yeah. And the other thing is, it's good for PR, because when you're out there in the morning and you're watering, people stop by and ask you, what are you doing? And they're always very pleased. Not that they want to sign up to help, but they are definitely.
Have you heard from homeowners who are willing to let you use hose bibs? That was an issue.
2 homeowners were interested, but we have not gotten an email from them. an official email saying
Okay.
you can go ahead and start. So we have not started watering in that area.
Okay.
And then I don't know how long to give them. I think that's our team leader will probably determine that.
Right, okay.
Before we leave that topic.
No, go ahead.
One other thing I just wanted to add, Liz is going to put, we have, well, first, Tom Evans, God bless him, shout out to Tom Evans. I always hear when the bags are low, but we have a leak in one of the bags, and a couple of other bags are not doing so well, so Liz is going to replace the 4 trees. There are 3 are ours now, and there's a 4th river birch that we've adopted, so she's going to put new bags on them. So thank you, Liz.
And the hose, the sprayer that you got fits perfectly into the hole. So you just kind of set it in there and then you can continue to chat with whoever you're helping.
That's great. Okay, well, thanks for that. And I guess the one thing that I wanted to do after looking at this agenda is perhaps move some things around, because I'm determined to spend most of the time today on the tree ordinance revision, just because we need to move that along. Secondly, under old business A, when we talk about priority plantings, since we aren't planting this time of year, I guess, right? And the next plantings would be in the fall. I did want to get an update on the Lake Avenue in a minute. But beyond that, I'm wondering if it would be okay to put off the next priority planting discussion until next month, because you're not going to be doing them until the fall anyway, right?
Well, what did we say the last meeting about timing?
Well, for Lake Avenue, you were still hoping to do it in June.
Yeah. No, about
The street tree.
fall.
We were talking about street trees. There were requests for street trees, and I don't know that we got any further than that on a priority list.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was just thinking, like, if we're gonna do this for the fall, like, have a priority list, and we're meeting once a month, it would have to be done next meeting.
Okay, well,
So
but we're not behind if we do it next meeting.
if we make a decision next meeting,
Okay,
yeah.
well, we'll have to do that. Yeah, okay, we'll have to do that. Sam, so what is the status of Lake Avenue?
Plans have been ordered.
So they are going in soon? Even all the trees?
Yeah, as far as, unless there's something they can't get and we have to put off.
Okay,
So how many trees are
15, I think.
15?
Right?
Somewhere around there.
16? Yeah.
So we should do something.
And where are they going along the street on Lake Avenue?
They're mixed in with, so
Okay.
some are in the island, some are on the breaker side, right?
Yeah, they're all
Scattered.
Nothing on the park side though.
Not right.
no, nothing on the park.
It's in the island and the breakers.
How many on the breaker side, and just roughly?
6? No, maybe more than that.
Just roughly.
Oaks?
Oh, wow.
Okay, I guess pretty well.
That's nice.
2 oaks.
And I think
Magnolias?
6 magnolias.
Hmm.
6, I think.
Oh, that'll be really
I think.
nice.
That's gonna be really pretty.
I don't remember.
Only
There's a
spent
water
like a dozen
source
hours
there.
staring at it.
Because we had talked about making that, a good opportunity for the committee to be there for the sort of
Yeah.
almost like a ribbon cutting for the planting celebration or whatever, and then use that to promote the commemorative tree program. So
Yes.
I guess we need to, and we don't have to do it like the day after they're planted. We
Right.
could do it just a few weeks later. But do you think that those would be in by the time of our next meeting? 'Cause if so, we could potentially,
Yeah.
go on a little field trip after the meeting or something and set that up. But,
Who's doing the planting?
Spizzato ended up being the lowest price.
They have watering included in the contract?
yeah, for a year, right?
Yeah, we usually do.
Well,
a
there's an
year.
irrigation system over there.
Sometimes we do,
I don't know.
we have a spray irrigation in one section and then just a regular yard hydrant in the other. So
Oh, okay, so you
it's
don't
pretty
have-
easy to hook up
Okay.
irrigation to that.
Okay.
But our designer did a great job picking low water requiring plants.
Good.
She tried.
Short of daylilies.
Yeah, exactly. And Lariabe.
Hey.
But Spasato is gonna be taking care of the tree for the first year or through the season?
I'll probably still haven't finalized the whole maintenance contract to add on to what they have. But we usually do 2 to 3 years for that. So
Okay.
they'll be under their control while they start to fill in and during warranty period and all that.
Great, okay.
So question,
Yep.
is there going to be an event with the mayor and, I mean, are there plans for anything?
There are not specific plans because I didn't know the timing of the planting of the trees. So I don't know whether it would rise to the level it would have any like speeches or anything, or whether it would just be an opportunity for us to, tell the world that we've supported, the commemorative tree program supported the trees that are in this.
Okay.
And then.
Maybe
So
we
it would be
could-
it would be us.
Maybe we could just.
I mean, I would hope he would be there, but I don't necessarily see it as an event like Arbor Day where there's speakers, I guess.
Okay, yeah, no.
But I
no
hadn't thought
speakers.
about it. I mean, if you think we should, but.
No, okay.
I was
think
gonna
about-
say
think
maybe we
about
should
that.
just get Lynn to come and take some photos to add to like social media and the
Right,
website.
exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
We could use it to publicize. Okay. Okay, so what I was thinking is that we should move ahead to new business and quickly talk about those two topics, and then that way spend the rest of the time, then back up to talk about the tree ordinance as the bulk of our discussion. So that was the thing I was gonna say. And Andrew, you had asked for the ivy removal from trees to be a topic, even though I know it's not an immediate thing. You had wanted to put it off till the fall, but I thought you should introduce it now.
Yes. I would like to do a targeted education program on ivy. And what I'm thinking is, Liz just handed me this, but something that would be the size of just a piece of paper, one-sided, two-sided perhaps, that would talk about the fact that ivy kills trees. Use some pictures, I even like this, choking hazard, something that just would grab you. And what I would like to do is to, I guess we could use the website, the city's website, to post something.
Yeah.
But really what I'd like to do is to walk through town and put this, not in the mailboxes, but in the doors of homes where we see that there is ivy. And it's something that I thought about doing in the spring. Given that so many places are rented during the summer, this is really something that I think owners need to get. And I think we'd be best off hitting those people up if we did this in the fall. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to design something now, I'll bring it in, and get people to react to it, and then maybe I could sign you all up to walk the city. And you can't put it in mailboxes, but you certainly can put it in the door.
That is frowned upon by the police department because it's an indicator that people aren't home.
Oh, that's right, I'd forgotten
Yeah,
about
that's
that.
not
I knew we couldn't do mailboxes, because that's a postal service regulation, but I had forgotten about the.
Is there any
Can we
way,
just mail it to them? I mean,
I suppose, you know, when we,
Cost
when
with
we,
that.
Is it,
I mean, there's a cost associated with that.
well, I
that's
mean,
correct.
But
can't
why
we use
don't
some
we-
of our tree money to do that? I
can't
mean,
we include it with the parking permit letter?
Something like that
spring?
would be, I mean, I'd like one
But-
right now to take to my next door neighbors.
What did you do?
I'd
Just
like
go
one
over
right
with
now
the
to take to my
clippers.
next door
Yeah.
neighbors.
I know
I'll
exactly,
talk to
yes.
them about it. There's a huge pine. It's actually a beautiful tree. It's covered in ivy.
Where's this?
It's on Grove Street between 3 and 2.
I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
And so they wanted, they were interested initially in
Oh,
taking
yeah.
the entire tree down, but we actually spoke to Liz about that. And that didn't happen. So now we just need to get the ivy cleaned off of it.
Right.
And I
Could
think,
send up with a pair of Felco clippers.
I'm just gonna talk to them. The new people are really, really sweet. They're nice. So.
We can't commingle messages like the parking permits
Well,
with the.
potentially, yeah, I mean,
I mean, no other,
You're waiting till next spring to do that.
Right,
That's
then
the
you're
big
waiting
problem.
till next
You know,
spring.
and is there no way to, I take your point about empty houses, that makes sense, but is there no way to do it where it would be discreet and it wouldn't be, I mean, it's not like it's something big,
It's not even that. I mean, a lot of these people aren't down at all.
Right,
honestly.
yeah, well, yeah, there's that. So.
There is the new newsletter that our new
Oh, that's a good
communication
idea.
Well, and that's
structure,
true,
lines
and
in
that,
the
and yes.
sand.
I'm
So we
sure
could
she
get a,
would-
we could get a
Yeah.
blurb in there.
Yeah, that would be.
We could certainly do a blurb in there, but I
Yeah.
do think
No,
that
it's not
contact
focused.
is
Well, a blurb
right.
and a link to
Yeah.
the version of this that's gonna be online.
Right.
And also, what about using the Cape Gazette next door
Yep.
and possibly the town website? And
Yes.
just put essentially the same message each
Right.
place.
For sure. I mean, that's absolutely something we can do. I will design something and get it out. Something that would be suitable for lines in the sand. Who gets lines in the sand? I know I do, and I
All the
didn't sign
people
up
who
for
are
it.
signed up on the, so it's like several thousand,
Yeah,
and
have
they're
to
not necessarily.
voluntarily sign up.
Right,
however.
I mean, I don't remember signing up, but I get it. So it's widely distributed now?
Yes.
Yeah, you
Okay.
didn't sign up probably specifically for that. If you signed up to get communications from the
Yeah,
city,
okay.
that is the next,
Okay.
iteration of communications from the
All
city.
right.
So it sort of replaces some things that used to be called something else.
I'm gonna just, can I go to the police and just talk to them, Liz? Just see how far we can go. I don't mind doing that,
Yeah.
all right?
Talk to the chief.
Yeah,
We have to bail you out.
In other words, if she goes in and doesn't come out.
Right.
So, and Andrea, are there instructions on here for people? Because,
There
some
are,
of these
and-
vines are huge
Yes.
and they have
I
a pretty large
have some
caliber.
great pictures. Somebody did a fantastic job on the public sites in Henlopen Acres. There are a couple of fabulous looking trees that have been,
Cypress Street Company.
yeah. It's Cypress, okay.
Cypress, because they
Yeah.
have Henlopen Acres.
So the idea would be, yes, to include something like that, yes.
Great. Thank you, Angie. It's going to be a useful project. I appreciate you doing that, taking that on. And I just have an update. This has been an interesting situation with, you remember at the end of the last meeting, I had asked about, well, what's the next public project? Because we were talking about the trees for Lake Avenue streetscape. And, there had been that presentation a few years ago by Tony Sharp about green infrastructure. And after the presentation, she got an agreement from the commissioners that all public projects would involve a plan for trees to be incorporated into them. So I was asking, well, what's the next public project? Turns out it's the Delaware Avenue Restroom expansion, which is going to start this fall. So within a couple of days of our meeting, Liz had talked to Kevin Williams and found out that, well, there aren't any plans for trees in that project. It has not gone out for bid yet. So we had a meeting, an internal meeting between Liz and the mayor and Kevin and Sharon Lynn to talk about that. But it's not an easy situation. So I'm going to introduce it, and then why don't you talk about some of the issues too, okay?
Sure. So I believe, and you might know the background better, but I think right when COVID started they had approval to expand the restrooms to include, I think family restrooms and changing rooms on the back end. So basically, if you're familiar with it, it has all the wooden boardwalk steps up front, and on the back is,
4 large crepe myrtles.
4 nice crepe
Yeah.
myrtles and 3 pine trees.
Yeah.
And so the expansion is occurring in the back. And basically all the, if we'll put it in quotes, green space, because it's mulch, so it's not green. But the green space will be the new changing and restrooms. So all 7 trees are slated for removal. The engineer looked at the possibility of moving the curb or creating bump outs on each side of the street. It's not feasible to move the curb. It's not feasible to create a bump out on the north side due to the intense amount of utilities underground. The south side it's feasible to create a bump out near essentially where Funland would be. We would lose 1 parking space permanently. So that would be a revenue loss of about $2,000 a year. And then on top of that, the bump out between engineering, construction, and the tree planting costs would be between $5,000 to $10,000. So I had proposed that perhaps it would be better to take some of that money and plant street trees on that block rather than spending, say, at the bare minimum, $5,000 plus $2,000 a year that would go into the general fund that helps support tree planting. So $2,000 for the next foreseeable future.
Right.
Instead, we plant 10, 12 trees along the street.
Right.
And
Yeah, I mean, I thought you made an excellent point about not devoting tree money to, concrete construction, whatever. And at the same time, I mean, it frustrates me because you know, here you go, you know, we're losing the ones that are there because of the expansion. But and you also said you could do some grasses in the front and stuff.
They might have a little bit of space left where we could do some minor landscaping,
Okay.
but we also had the fire hydrant there as well as a big, I don't
In
know
the
what it is,
front?
a
Okay.
big utility pit, for lack of better description. I mean, it's the size of a table, so
Yeah.
we'd have to be careful, but there might be able to be some smaller grasses, shallow rooted plants, no trees, but maybe
Right.
something green.
No, yeah, because, and that's what I want to say about it, because green infrastructure isn't just trees. You know, I mean, we obviously want it to be mostly trees, but there are other components, just like the Lake Avenue streetscape has other components. So if the space doesn't allow for a tree, but it would allow for, you know, grasses or whatever, I think we need to make sure that those are in there as well, rather than just letting the space stay empty.
Yeah.
We're,
Well-
we're talking about the area around the stairs.
No, in the back.
Oh, in the back, you're talking
Well-
about the back. Now, what about in the front? Is there anything?
They're not doing anything there.
Nothing, okay.
It's just all boardwalk and steps.
Liz, Panicum would work.
Yeah, it depends on exactly how much space we end up and where, because like we can't have it within a certain distance of the hydrant. We can't have it with, you know, so
Right.
we'll see. I think there'll be a couple pockets we could put something, but I don't think it'll be anything for us to get all excited about. But it will absorb more stormwater and be more attractive than bare dirt, so.
Right, and that's what's important. And
Yeah.
that's really, well, I walked over there yesterday and I did see that, somewhat to my surprise, there are a number of blank areas on Delaware there where we could put, is it wide enough?
I think it's 3 feet, so we could have small trees there.
Okay, because mostly what's on that block are pines, and they seem to be, you know, doing all right.
A little bit of a mixture on
But-
there.
But it looked to me, I don't know how many we'd be talking about. How many are coming out? Like 6?
7.
7. So we want to do that many, right?
Yeah, I would say that'd be fair. We could try to do a couple additional, depending on
Okay,
where.
that'd be even better so we could look at doing maybe 9 or 10 somewhere on that block.
Yeah, maybe, I think 10 would be a nice round number
Okay,
to
great.
shoot for.
Well, then I think next month, when we talk and sort of review the priority plans for commemorative tree, that
That would be
those will
there.
be on there. Because it's supposed to be finished, does it go into next spring, or is it just a fall project? I can't
I
remember.
don't know. I wouldn't imagine that would, I mean, it's definitely this fiscal year.
Oh, I know that, yeah, but whether the things get planted this fall or in the spring, I don't.
Oh,
well, But it'd probably be this fiscal year, as you say, so, right?
Well, for us, because it wouldn't have anything to do with, we wouldn't have to wait for the restroom to be done or anything, so I don't see why
Oh,
we
right,
couldn't
exactly, that's
plant
true,
them this
that's
fall.
true, yep, very, yep.
It has to
okay.
happen between seasons.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't,
Yeah. I went over and looked the other day too, after
Yeah.
Susan and I discussed this, and there are many available spots for trees on Delaware Avenue, so
Right.
that's not a problem.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing that occurred to me, you know, every tree has some value, but the trees that are there are not the greatest looking. I mean, they're not doing real well. Even the crepe myrtles are green on the top, but you get down a ways, they're not getting much sun, and they're hidden by the building.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of
See,
space, so it's not like we're
the
giving
crepes
up.
are, see, I think the crepes are great there.
Well, they're big,
Yeah.
and
Big,
they're doing
yeah, they've
well
been
on
there
the
a while.
top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
but the only reason they lived this, see, the only reason they even lived is because the building
Right.
blocked all of
The building blocks everything,
Yeah.
sure.
So probably if they ever reached above the building, they would just be like fried by the next
Yeah.
nor'easter.
Right, yeah. Well, and
Well,
that, but,
I was just gonna say, Susan, you know, the old thing that occurs to me anyway, to try to justify it, is always trying to achieve this balance
yeah,
in town. I mean, we desperately need family assistance restrooms because we don't have any. So we are going to get those, and so, you know, if you kind of try to balance and then put the trees down the street,
yeah, right.
Oh,
You know.
that's
Yeah,
good.
I
You hit
think
on
that
a
works.
key point. We try to balance conservation, recreation, and
Yeah.
equity, right? So
Yeah.
this kind of falls in the equity and recreation section, and we didn't do great on the conservation, but we're gonna make it up 50 feet away. So I
Very
think
good.
that's sometimes the best, and I was hoping we could come, and I know Commissioner Gay was hoping we could come to a consensus today that we would rather do 10 street trees than spend the money on
Right.
one bump out,
Right.
if
Yeah.
everybody's kind of in
Yeah.
agreement with that.
Is it going to be a challenge to find trees that can survive that close to the ocean in that kind of environment, or?
It really limits us, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll have higher mortality, shorter lifespans, which is why the ocean blocks are less
Right. No, I
or
know
more
that.
sparsely treed than the others.
So tell me again, what trees would have potential to do well in that area that's closer to the,
Well, so it would have to be a salt tolerant tree. So there's a handful of them, but then on top of that, it'll have to be a small tree because we only have about 3 feet width. So you'll be stuck with, like, normally along the streets, you'd see red buds. Think of what we have, the Japanese silk lilac trees do really well close to the bandstand with all the salt air and a tiny growing space. So we'll be along those lines.
Japanese salt. Sycamores seem to do okay. There's a huge one on 3
No,
Queen
the
Street,
Brit-
but they're too big.
Yeah, they do fine. They seem to do fine with all the salt. I mean, because even the super salt tolerant trees like honey locust they still struggle when you get that close. So it might be better kind of to start at the back of the block and work our
Right,
way up.
yeah, right, yeah.
So if the sycamore does well, will London Plain do well as well?
Yeah, yeah.
But they're too big as well, also.
They're
They'll be bigger than the right away width
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
that's what they use in New York City.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Philly
London
is
Plains.
really well known for having that. Like, I remember you can't even open your car door in some sections because it's
Right.
the tree has smashed everything up so
That's
much.
why I'm asking. We have a lot of London Plains, but I love them. They're
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, peeling bark.
But yeah, so we'll be smaller trees. So, think the Japanese silk lilac, the Amelanchier, or what was the other one we do? The golden rain tree. It's a little bigger, but it might be okay.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm glad to know there's some options there and there's space on Delaware Avenue. That's wonderful. Okay, well, now, on to the meat of the discussion about. Let me just say a couple things by way of introduction. First of all, I had put some topics that I wanted to try to resolve today, mostly because they're kind of the biggest, meatiest issues, the tree density requirements, the protection during construction, and the fees and permits and fines and permits. But beyond that, there are a lot of other elements to the ordinance and you all had provided feedback on the shorter version, and now, I've sent you a couple times the longer version. So I wanted to say that whatever else in the entire ordinance you want to comment on, feel free to do that. Not even within this meeting. You can send them to me and I'll make sure that they get incorporated, because it's just that I thought, since we don't have a huge amount of time, that I should limit the discussions of the debate kind of discussions to the areas that are the meatiest. But beyond that, I will also say that if for some reason, we don't reach a consensus, or there's some topics that you send me that you want to have added, we don't have to resolve everything before the commissioners talk about it again. I can easily take, and I'm sure I will, Dick got feedback from the Environment Committee, in fact, and some of their comments are really interesting, and I wouldn't expect to resolve them. I would expect to take them to the commissioners and say, here's where we are, and here's some issues that we want to talk about, like, for instance, commercial. What do we want the requirements for commercial to be? There aren't any now, and maybe we can't have any because you can build to 100% of the lot. That's part of the challenge. But there may be some issues there that the commissioners could talk about. So I want to get to the point where we can take it back. And I was hoping that between this meeting and part of the next meeting, and then with any comments coming back from you all in the meantime, that by the end of the July meeting, we could be ready to kind of wrap it up. So that's the goal. I hope we can do it. But one of the things I did was looked at the tree density requirements. And interestingly, there are a lot of similarities. So there are only a few variables that aren't similar, right? For instance, the current ordinance as well as the proposed ordinance still includes 3 trees on a standard 5,000 square foot lot. But the current ordinance, the longer version I sent has 3 shade trees. I don't know that it necessarily defines them. And it has 4-inch diameter for existing and 3-inch for new, but both at 12 feet. Whereas the low oversight version and most of the discussions I've seen up to this point have taken that diameter requirement down to 2 inches. So that's one issue we should talk about. But the other thing is, what I liked about the Law Oversight Committee's version is they're not just saying shade trees without defining it. They're saying the first tree has to be high canopy. The second tree has to be either high canopy or a native species. And then the third one is any permitted tree. And I like that specificity. So this is where we are.
This is my, and I'm gonna gear it back to me because I live in one of those 5,000 square foot lots, which maybe the majority of us do. If I was doing a construction project and I had to plant some new trees, there's so many neighboring shade trees that are over my property, and this or I'm just gonna go with what exists today. My 150-year-old oak is probably at a good 20-degree angle because of the density of the other shade trees in the yard. My oak is reaching for sun.
Your yard or the neighbor's yard?
My yard, the oak is reaching for the sun from the neighbors because there's so much shade.
Right.
This paragraph on the density trees has to also incorporate something. If there's a large shade tree coming off your property, it does not make sense to plant a shade tree under that shade tree because it's not going to go anywhere. The height of it's going to be stifled, or it can just start to lean like my oak did over the years. I mean, this is long term. You're looking at 50, 60 years of this because I don't know, because if you're gonna make somebody plant a shade tree and their yard is already all shaded from the neighboring trees, it's not like they get a free pass, but it's not gonna be healthy for any of the trees.
Well, there's some, I mean, one thing to think about is that, I mean, at some point in time, and hopefully it's not anytime soon, but like you will lose that 150-year-old oak, and it's nice to already have something that is a smaller,
It's true.
younger version of a shade tree, but you're not starting immediately from scratch. It's already.
You
You just have to pick out
the
something.
family's in the quandary. I want to leave it up. Like my mother's like, what happens if that tree starts dying and to get somebody in here like in 20 years, but the life expectancy of an oak tree could be 200 years. So I'm looking at another half century of this oak thriving, and Cypress came out and they said, this is a healthy tree, you have another 100 years on it. So I'm just taking myself as an example, but I think I live between 2nd and 3rd on Henlopen Avenue, and everybody is very densely planted on that street.
Right, yeah.
From Columbia to Henlopen and all your.
But I don't know how I mean, the code has to be for the whole
correct,
city.
I
So,
understand that.
And I don't know whether that kind of case would come to Liz to be appealed or what, or whether you have you had situations like that?
I mean, if it is densely planted, then odds are you're not gonna have to plant anything.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
I mean, then that's where you have caveats built in. I think one of the proposed native or shade. So
Right.
native
Yeah, yeah.
could be a understory tree such as a
Right.
dogwood or a redbud.
Right.
You could say you have a big canopy tree, or your neighbor does, on the back left side of your property. Well then, and it's still shady on the back right, well, you could still put in something if you're far enough from the ocean, like a sugar maple that does well with shade. Hence, that's why they're one of the only canopy trees, deciduous, that does well with shade. So that's why I have them at Grove. But there are ways to
So
get
the
around it.
list of permitted trees is a range that takes into account different conditions and different environments.
Correct, all right,
Okay.
I just wanted to make.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't-
Because it's.
I haven't had it yet where they had too many trees to plant what was required. And I've been
Okay,
here
all right.
doing this
That's
for
fine.
5 years.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say it couldn't happen.
I mean, since I've moved in 25 years ago, I've planted 17 trees.
Yeah,
But
so
they're
They're-
dogwoods, they're
right,
crepe myrtle,
yeah.
all around the yard.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of cases sometimes where I recommend people remove shrubs to plant a tree where they have big hedges of like euonymus or something.
Right.
But I mean, I'm not gonna say it couldn't happen, but also we just tend to see less tree removal in the areas that are more densely treed, such as, you're on like Henlopen or Columbia, yeah. So Sussex, Henlopen, Columbia, we don't see a ton of trees removed there. And if they are being removed, it's generally development or they're straight up dead. Like you have no other choice. We're almost dead.
Yeah.
Well, and Liz, you and I have talked about this before in terms of the caliber. Because I want a bigger, you know, I had wanted 3 inch. I went through this even in another property I have where, you know, I was just so frustrated that I only got a 2 inch. But you have said that the smaller ones catch up quicker. Yeah, and it's
easier to find what you
Right.
want. Like if you're going in and you're looking for a 3-inch tree,
yeah,
you're gonna have to call around.
yeah.
Like we have a pretty restrictive list, and then we're saying it has to be 3 inches and 12 feet tall.
Right,
So you just
yeah.
knocked out like 90% of the trees sitting in the nursery.
So you're good with the 2 inch caliber.
That would be my recommendation. It's a
Okay.
fine balance because you want a big enough sized tree that your landscaper isn't gonna mow over it.
Right.
So you don't want a little
Right.
twig, 1
Right.
inch or whatever. But once you get up to 3 and 4, they have a lot of transplant stress when they're planting.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Right.
I really, I needed to hear that.
Yeah, so you go in, you would spec at the landscape, you'd want to call the nursery and ask for, they come 2 to 2.5 inch.
So would that also be the requirement in your recommendation for existing trees as well? Or do you think if existing trees are being counted in the density, they should be bigger? They should be a little bit bigger? Because right now, the PC version has 4 inch for existing.
I don't see how you could do that.
Okay.
Because, so you have a 2-inch dogwood on your property, but I can't count that for your minimum density, but you could plant another 2-inch dogwood and have it count.
Fair enough. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Okay,
fair
kinda
enough.
Okay, when you say 2 inch, enlighten me, it's not it's just from the end to the end, the width
No,
of
it's the
tree?
diameter.
The diameter.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Those 2
Yeah.
inches is really nothing.
But I have a 2 inch oak, and actually I have probably a 1.5 inch oak in my yard, but it's getting there, slowly but surely. But what about, no height is, well, the planning commission version did say 12 feet, and I know you say that limits you. In the LC version, there's no height specified at all. Should there be some height specified? Should we say 8 feet minimum?
We should have a height because the multi-stem trees and the evergreens go by height in the nursery.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you wanted a multi-stem river birch, you would be asking for, say, a 12 to 14 foot or whatever size.
Well, in terms of the code, should the code have a minimum just for
Like
anything?
8 to 10 at least.
10?
8
If
to
we're-
10 to 12.
If we're thinking, yeah, probably 8 feet would be the
Okay.
minimum.
Because
Just trying-
evergreens, like, you would specify, I mean, you can fairly readily find like 7 to 8 foot
Yeah.
evergreens, or 8 to 10 foot evergreens. Sometimes that's a little more difficult, but.
We don't have many people planting evergreen, honestly, on the property.
Really?
Well, I mean, you have a pine tree and a
Cryptomeria?
holly. Cryptomeria is Japanese, so
Yeah,
that
so
wouldn't
it's
be on the list,
on the
the
list.
current
Magnolia,
list.
Right, yeah.
Magnolia grandiflora.
Southern magnolia is not native to Delaware, so it's not on the list.
Magnolias aren't on the list?
But
Deciduous, yes.
Magnolia virginianas are, but Magnolia grandiflora.
Okay.
What we think of as a magnolia, the southern magnolia that
Right.
looks beautiful right
Yes,
now.
yes.
Those
my
are
neighbor
not
has one.
on the current list. I would have those added to if we changed it because they do pretty well here. And they are native to the area, if not specifically to Sussex County, Delaware. And they seem to be pretty salt tolerant.
Yeah, they do. They're surviving nicely at 3 Queen Street.
What about?
Oh, nice. Okay, that's close to the ocean.
Yeah, we have a beautiful one at the senior center. What's the little historical building there? It's
Oh, the Anna Hazard House?
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
It's beautiful southern magnolia.
Yeah.
It's probably getting to bloom right now. Yeah.
So here's the big question too. How about line trees? They currently don't count. And the Planning Commission's version had them not counting. The Law Oversight Committee specifically added them because they did it in order to give some credit, because there's so many lime trees around town. And the way it works is each homeowner would get a 50% credit. So you couldn't, you couldn't count it for a whole tree, but if you had a lime tree, but you could count it for half.
What's a lime tree?
On the property line.
Ah,
Straddles the
I
property,
see.
straddles
Yeah,
the
yeah.
property
But
line.
keep in mind, currently, they don't count for you, but they don't count against you either. So if you have a 30-inch line tree being removed, there's no mitigation placed on either property.
That's a good point.
So it kind of,
That's a good point. So
It
they're just
kinda-
not in the equation.
pretty much, yeah.
Right, okay. Because I think, Sturgis had told me that part of the reason they included it was that otherwise they didn't feel like lime trees around town were gonna be protected, and there's so many of them.
Well,
But-
they still have to meet the same qualifications to be, I can only speak currently, but they still have to meet the same qualifications to be removed as a tree on your own private property, except now with a lime tree, both owners have to agree that they
Right,
want
and
the
that's
tree
the problem.
removed.
Logistically, it presents a huge, that's
Yeah.
the issue.
I
Yeah.
think though they will be protected in the sense that most of the time they're put up for privacy. And
Right.
Both sides want it. That's the case,
Right.
actually mine are on my property, but it was privacy.
Right.
And I would protect it.
I
Yeah.
don't have a problem with them
Yeah.
counting as long as logistically we can figure it out. Because if you have a 30-inch oak on the front yard property line and it's a beautiful tree and you and your neighbor each pay to take care of that tree,
Mm-hmm.
You have that responsibility. I don't see why it shouldn't count somewhat.
So you like the counting them half?
Yeah, but I think it needs to balance out too.
Meaning,
So my only question about that is, isn't it more conservative to not count them? When I say more conservative, we want more trees.
right, yes.
So if we don't count it, we sort
Yeah.
of force people to have more trees in their yards.
I think so. I think that's why it hasn't
agree.
been in there up to this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
Also, I have a lime tree. I take care of it.
Right, okay, yeah. So, yeah, that's right.
There.
Yeah,
But I was
right.
saying, we have a lot of line trees, and in fact, at one point, we had a neighbor at the time who wanted to remove line trees, and we actually appealed to Liz over that and said, we're against it, we're just saying this, and so that's not going to change. And fortunately, because both sides have to agree, the line trees are still there, and they're beautiful, and they're healthy, and they're tall,
Right.
and we want those, so
Good point.
I don't know.
So it sounds like the consensus is to not count them. Right. And it also sounds like the consensus is that the 2-inch caliper works, 8-foot minimum. And how about the language that the first would be high canopy, the second would be high or native, the third is any permitted?
That, I think, is one of the best things in that.
Yeah, I
in
do
that.
too.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with.
Okay.
That I will put a caveat on that makes it complicated. Nobody's going to be able to turn in a planting plan that meets that. And one of the goals of this is that when they turn in a tree permit, they have their trees ready to plant.
Okay, why?
That's even more complicated than what we have now.
Okay, let's
Okay,
talk
well, then
about
we
why.
gotta talk
Let's-
about that,
all
because
right,
you're
let's-
right. It's
'cause-
supposed
And I
to be
did say this
simplified.
during law oversight. I
did?
agree with the theory behind it, that we want to encourage canopy and native.
Right.
But
Okay, let's hear
So why does
why.
it make it more difficult?
could anybody give me right now a planting plan that meets that? I send people a bullet point with 3 bullet points and they can't send me a planting plan without me editing it 2 to 3 times.
Well, aren't they working with, are they doing their own planting plan, or
A lot of
are they
times.
working with somebody?
A lot of times they do their own. See, it takes legitimately, it would take a professional to
Right.
turn in that plan. So a developer, a homeowner, they're gonna struggle with that.
Wait. But wouldn't we, if we adopt this, wouldn't we then put out something that says these are the canopy
Yeah.
trees, these are the natives?
We
and
have,
these-
legitimately, we have exactly, if you've ever looked at my tree list, it's
Yeah, I
color coded,
Yes,
right?
Yes, you
So
have.
maximum of 1 evergreen, maximum of 1 small species. Evergreen is green, small species is blue. Minimum size is 3-inch, 12 feet. 1 must be in the front yard. We can have a blank slate with nothing on the lot. I had this recently, and it took them 3 times to get it right. Okay? We're trying to limit that. This does not help with that, I will say. And we may say, well, that doesn't matter. We like this enough that that is what it is, but this does not make it simpler.
That's incredible to me. Yeah, I mean, I would think it'd be like one from column A, one from column B, you know, it's like the Chinese menu approach.
Yeah,
to-
you would think, you would think.
I'd like 2 of number 2.
Two number twos.
Yeah, right.
Can I sub the number 3 for a 2
Sounds
number
like you're at
one?
Subway ordering a sandwich.
Oh,
Pick
yeah.
your cheese, pick your meat.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Right.
Liz, what would be your suggestion there
Yeah,
to modify that or just eliminate it or what? I mean, I think people need some kind of guidance. We need that for the city.
Yeah,
I do.
plus, we're
And
trying to get
I-
canopy in there.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, we could eliminate the small species
What do you mean?
and just not have them on the list.
Are
Well,
your
yeah, okay.
small species color coded differently on that list? I
But
should
small
know.
species
On
aren't in the
mine,
new.
they're in the blue font on
They're
the
in
one
the
I
blue
did.
font, or
Mhm.
they're like or they're, and so, but all the ones that are on the list
Mhm.
are natives, right?
Yes,
And they can't figure that one out.
yes. Oh, I get people that don't attach the list to the email, and I get people that don't even choose things on the list. So, listen, you're not gonna solve everybody, but like for an average person that I think people don't read, honestly,
Yeah,
I don't
right.
think they read the email. But for the average person, they should be able to read it and figure it out.
Right. Well, and from what I hear you saying, this new terminology is no more complicated than the current. I mean, the current's already giving them problems, or giving you problems because they
think
don't
it's
follow it.
Yeah, it might be a little bit more because now it could be, you have to, like the way it is now, I mean, that might be able to be rephrased more simply. Let me see, because it's one high canopy. You could just say a maximum of one small species and a maximum of one non-native. And I think that would get you almost the same result.
Wait a minute, say that again. A
Because
maximum.
the word small isn't even in here. It's in the current
Ornamental,
code.
whatever they call it.
But it just said, the third one is any permitted, but it doesn't say
Underscore.
small, ornament, doesn't say anything, it just says any permitted. So,
But when we develop this list, it's gonna have to have a list of native canopy.
right,
According to this, native canopy, native other, and then other approved,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. It's one from column A, one from column B, one from column C. I don't understand why people can't figure that
Listen,
out.
I'm telling you right here, I've done this for 5 years.
Yeah.
That's complicated, okay, compared to what we have.
Do you think it's complicated because people have an idea of what they want and they're not just, they're ignoring it and hoping?
No, I think it's, just is what it is.
They're
I
just
don't
not-
think we
maybe
need to
they're not-
delve into the psyche.
Right, or maybe they're not focused on the distinctions between trees.
Yeah, try to make it
Yeah.
more, I think we need to make that a little bit more simplistic.
You could say understory trees.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
there we go.
But you could say native understory trees.
I
and
mean,
have a list.
We could just say column A, B, and C as far as I'm concerned.
Choose one.
From a list to be provided by because we're not gonna put the list of trees in the
Mhm.
code. I think that had come up at previous meetings, that the list would be separate, just so that if it changes over time, you're not redoing the code.
Column A, wait, B, and C.
Yeah, okay, well, we probably have to work that. Okay.
Okay.
And then line trees would not count. Okay, we said that. The tree protection is interesting because I think most of the requirements that are in the code now are being retained. I thought it was great that, and this is at the top of page 19 on the version I sent you all, I thought it was great that very early on in the law oversight discussions, one of their members added the stop work order. That if the tree protection was failed, that a stop work order for all permitted work would result. And I kind of like that. And I believe the language that they ultimately adopted was it may, meaning it wasn't a requirement, it just was an option. And I don't know what you think, Liz, but I like putting that in there as a given, that if the protection barriers are broken, that work has to stop until it's fixed.
We can do that now, but it has to be egregious. We give them a warning.
Right. yeah, okay.
And that's how that would go too, because I don't really have the ability to do a stop work on building permits, so that would
Right.
have to come from one of the building officials.
Right, okay.
So code enforcement assistant or chief building inspector.
But the one thing that I know this group has talked about and is not in here is any kind of provision for construction techniques or digging techniques that would be required for tree protection. Do we want to add that?
I don't think either version goes far enough to protect
Right, I remember you saying
what
that.
we would call, or we would think of as a specimen tree. Well,
Yeah.
however, whatever size and or species or condition we want to say, but at some point, a tree becomes a feature, something that we really need to protect versus a 10-inch oak that we can replace with a 3-inch. So whatever size that may be, maybe it's 25, maybe it's 35. But at some point, we need to require extra protections.
So,
So what's-
question,
Mhm.
sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Have you seen a problem with development where you say have a line tree, a specimen tree, a large shade tree, and they're digging where it damages the root system enough that you see death?
Don't see many trees die immediately from construction.
Okay.
It, I had my architect come out, and he's gonna be building close to that 150-year-old oak. He's gonna be building that section on pilings. Like he's
Oh,
gonna,
interesting.
he has a special equipment that can, just like a stud finder, he
Mhm.
can judge where the roots are. So he's gonna work with a contractor and the structural engineer, and then building between.
Well,
Interesting, yeah.
she pointed out a key thing is that they actually went to the site. So a lot of times with these new homes, the architect engineer doesn't, they're sitting drafting at a computer. They
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
come here and look at the site. So it takes the developer saying, Liz, I already looked into it. There's no way we can save these trees because I knew you would ask. And that's
Right.
what I'm getting, okay?
Yeah.
That has been developed over time now that they know that that's gonna be a request.
Mhm.
That we are going to request, your pool is in the middle of that 35-inch oak tree. We're moving the pool over, right?
Mhm.
Or if you don't want to move the pool over, then the permit's not approved and you can appeal it. And that'll take 2 months.
Mhm.
Okay.
And you're doing that now?
Yes.
And
Right.
when people appeal the permit, do they usually win?
Not always, not always.
Well, we have a whole new group, so I can't judge that,
Well, I
honestly.
mean, I'm following the letter to try to protect it, I guess, because I
Most
brought my
people-
architect, I was like,
Most people,
figure it out.
most people don't appeal it.
Right,
Most
and
people-
I was heartened to hear you say that. At the last meeting, you said something like 4 out of 5 will alter their plans.
Yeah, I
And-
mean,
That's
but if
good.
you guys are interested, this coming meeting at the end of this month, we have one where they refuse to alter their plans.
Okay, right, and, yeah,
So you'll get we'll see.
yeah, okay, all right.
Okay, and
Okay.
And so they had a 2-month wait for their building permit and their tree permit, and they're sitting there and it's costing them time and money, and we'll see what the outcome will be.
is it for a pool? Is the issue a pool?
No,
Or
they,
basement?
no, it's a front walkway.
Oh, that's the same one as the most recent one, which was like back in January, was
Most-
that same
Is it
one?
on Henlopen Avenue?
Is that coming to Park and Shade?
Is it on Henlopen Avenue? Or you don't know?
No, it's not
Okay.
on Henlopen, no.
Why can't they move the walkway?
Because there was one, there was a previous.
They could,
one.
they didn't want to.
So they could just,
Well,
they
there's
could
a
have
lot
moved
of
it
things
over.
in life that
Yeah,
I
I
want
mean,
that I
so
can't.
then-
Well,
But
there are-
that's
there are
why we have
hierarchies.
this
That's
appeals
why we
process.
have this,
Right.
yes.
Right,
That's
that's
why
why we have
the
the
There are
process.
hierarchies. There are, if you're building a home and you're building the home of your dreams, you move down here and there's a tree in the way, that takes
Values.
precedent over a sidewalk or a walkway. Walkways can be moved,
That's what I'm
sometimes
saying,
plans
yeah.
can't.
Right,
So
exactly.
that's why we have this.
And that's
Yeah.
where we happen, like, if the tree is in the middle of the living room, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Now,
exactly.
you might have people who go about, like, and it's interesting she brought up the building on piers, because if anybody's not familiar with the term, the Rehoboth basement, where it doesn't count for anything, but it destroys everything.
Right,
Like,
exactly. Can't count as living space, but it
Yes.
destroys everything
It's
around it, right?
not within my purview to tell them they can't have that. By the code, they can have that.
Mhm.
So you can have your front walkway, but you don't have to go through the tree. But I can't tell them they can't have that 6'6" basement. And when you have that 6'6" basement, 3 to 4 feet out from everything's gotta go.
Well, that's the issue of it, but aren't there digging techniques, granted, they're more expensive, but aren't there, that's why we're having this discussion, because I had wondered if that was an element of tree protection that we had not yet included.
I think we have to look at that
Is,
too.
is a requirement for
Well,
those
yes
kinds
and
of
no,
things.
because it's a safety thing when they're digging. They have like a certain amount they have to go out
Right, yeah.
when they do that basement. Now, if they're digging, if they're doing piers, then it's not the same, right? They don't have to excavate 3 to 4 feet out for the base so that there's room for a human being to work down there and not have cave-ins on them. So,
Can we require that?
require what?
The piers?
Porch, front porches? Well,
No, just to use a technique that would not go out 3 or 4 feet,
well, not for not for the,
not for basements.
I think we could require it for the front porch encroachment, because that does sometimes, when we allow that extra 5 feet on the front porch, that does sometimes destroy trees that shouldn't be destroyed.
Right.
And we do have a focus on tree-lined streets, front yard
Right,
trees, so
right.
I think that's something that could be required. Some builders put
And
their
what would it
porches.
be? What would the requirement be?
I mean, you'd have to talk to the building official specifically about that, but
Okay.
like I said, some put their front porches on pilings,
Okay.
and some dig the foundation for them.
Okay. Okay.
We're just looking, like in my case, the rest of it will be on a foundation, but when we're cutting close to that tree and where the roots are starting, that's where the pilings will start,
Right,
in
yeah.
between the roots. And it's
Right.
gonna be calculated accordingly, so those pilings can hold the weight.
Yeah, that's great.
So I amended, I'm like, yeah, do what you have to do to amend the design of the
Right,
house.
exactly.
But
We're
see,
gonna
we're
have to do
already
that.
granting them like leeway with that front porch allowed to encroach and
Yeah.
not counting.
Right.
So I think it would be fine to put this caveat
Yeah.
on it.
So
That
what,
would be a reasonable give and take.
Okay.
what
all
would the
right.
caveat be then exactly?
Well, we allow them now currently to, your front yard setback in
Right.
R1 is
Okay.
15 feet. So we allow them to encroach with the
Right.
front porch up to 5 feet into
Right.
that.
Mhm.
So
So it would be a 10-foot setback then.
Yeah, that is, yeah, that's
Ten-
what.
for
most-
where the
that's what most
porch is
people do.
only.
Yes.
And pretty much every house does that.
Yeah, right.
And I think the rationale is that we wanted
Yeah.
to encourage people to have front porches
Correct.
and that neighborly.
Right, and they also
Feel.
don't count against gross floor area.
Yes,
They don't have anything above.
another one, yes, they
Yeah.
don't.
But that's, but you're saying the requirement would be you cannot have a dug foundation on a front porch?
I mean, you'd have to get more in the technicalities
Okay,
of
yeah, I
that
can
with
talk to
the
management
building
about that.
department,
Yeah.
but
So okay,
yeah, that could help.
And
And
have a dug.
Yeah, that's-
Because this becomes a major unintended consequence.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Can't have
The
a
porch
dug
up, but you may be
foundation.
killing trees that
Yeah.
wasn't the intention,
And
but.
you're that
it
much closer to
happens.
city trees,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
by
very
getting
much.
that,
it does
This
happen
is
too.
important.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
We have trees come out because of pool equipment, HVAC, front porches, occasionally sheds, if there's nowhere else to put them, all these things that can encroach into the setback.
Right, yeah,
Walkways can encroach
Right.
into the setback and you're
yeah.
allowed to have a
Why
legal
would a
walkway.
shed damage a tree? I mean, mine's sitting up on
No, I
Yes.
mean, say your backyard is wooded and you
Oh,
wanna
okay,
put
you
in
need a
a
shed. Okay,
10
I
by
see.
20 shed.
a, yeah, okay.
Where's
yeah.
it gonna go except
Right.
on a tree?
Right.
That's a rarity. They usually can move those around, but I mean, you know of the case where the tree came out because of the shed.
Right, yep, yep,
So it happens.
right, yep, true, okay. You mentioned specimen, so I see here the definition that's in the code, now it may be the current one too, for all I know, I didn't compare it. But it talks about it being 24-inch DBH and a life expectancy of greater than 15 years as a definition of a specimen tree. Should there be construction limitations to save specimen trees? I mean, anywhere in the yard, not just.
So right now, it's a specimen is over 24 inches, but then there's a few species called out that are over like 4 inches.
Oh, yeah, that's elsewhere. isn't it?
Dogwood and
Yeah, yeah.
juniper, and maybe one or two
So-
others. I believe that larger, older trees should be granted more protections. Yes, I mean in DC they had changed it to if they're now they do it by circumference, so it's a little
Yes.
different.
Mhm.
But I think it equates to if it's over 31 inches, whatever the circumference for that would be, the tree just cannot come out.
Right,
You
okay.
cannot get a permit for it. And I'm not saying I think we need to go there, but we should be trying to protect those trees that can't be replaced in a lifetime.
Right, okay. And that would be even if they're in the footprint, or?
With DC, yeah, that's how it is.
Right, yeah, right.
I'm not saying we should do that here. I'm just
Right,
saying, like,
yeah, I know, yeah.
the precedent is there. People, other municipalities protect larger trees.
Right.
Speaking of DC,
So-
I did call the Casey Tree Foundation, and I did find the woman who is in charge of tree ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
And she did say pro bono that she has reviewed tree ordinances.
Yeah, uh-huh.
So I have her number right here.
Oh, great, yeah, we should definitely like it, yeah, absolutely. Well, so if we're not prepared to say that we're gonna save every last specimen tree, what can we do just to save more?
I had originally thought of different things, allowing certain variances, and this would require
Yep.
working with the zoning code and that.
Right.
I got that from a few different ordinances, Atlanta's being one of them.
That's right, yeah.
Where it's not just, hey, you could get a variance to protect this tree, but an administrative variance will be granted if
Okay,
A, B, C, D. So all these conditions are met.
the conditions being,
Whatever you want to set. So say if it was for parking, you're prepared to grant a 50% reduction in required off-street parking if the tree to be retained is in healthy condition, if the city manager, the public works director, and the city arborist and the chief building inspector all sign off on it, and you sign off if the tree is ever to be removed, then you would have to come into compliance.
right, okay, yeah.
I mean, just for example, it could be whatever, but you can set those pieces to it.
Okay. And it'd be something like the parking requirement, or would it be
That was just an example I
yeah,
gave.
right,
I mean,
yeah.
it could be, you could allow a variance in the setbacks by a
Yeah,
couple
well,
of,
that's-
by
I
a
was thinking
percentage
that,
or by
yeah.
feet. You know, maybe a 2 foot or a 10% variance in the setback.
Yeah, that's gonna be, I have a feeling that's gonna be a discussion we'll have among the commissioners, because that's a difficult issue, and it's one that involves building licensing too, yeah.
Yep. But we had talked about, I mean, for years, we've been talking about building all the mayors
Absolutely, that's
and
a
all the
biggie,
commissioners.
absolutely.
Not just
Absolutely.
providing for it, but building them into the code so that it's, right now, you have to pay $1,000 to go to the Board of Adjustments to get a variance to retain a tree.
Right,
People don't want to do that. They don't even,
right,
people back down when they see that $1,000 price tag and it's justified, trust me,
Right.
after seeing those meetings, but that's not how we encourage people to retain trees.
right, exactly, yeah. So you would want it to be an administrative.
It would have
fall
to.
To the administrative category.
It would have to. Nobody would go to the Board of Adjustments.
Right,
It's just too much of a pain, quite honestly.
Right.
Even if
So
the
that's a
cost
distance.
was, even if the cost was waived and the city was willing to eat those attorney and advertising
Right.
fees.
yeah,
Um,
okay.
But beyond that, you can do certain things like require arborist reports, require certain like soil tests, fertilizations, air spading of the roots. There's all kinds of different things you can require. Health and monitor, you could require them to have a certified arborist submit reports throughout. I mean, we do
Throughout
that.
the construction, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do
Right.
that for,
That's right.
if you guys have ever, the erosion and sediment control for the state, like when you have a big
Mhm.
development,
Yep.
they have to hire a CCR and they
Right.
have to submit reports, so it wouldn't be that dissimilar.
Okay,
But
I'm
we're
taking notes
talking
on this too.
about really specimen
Right,
trees.
yes.
Like I said, not your 8-inch.
Right, no, I understand, and like I said, right now, the code has a definition of 24 inches, are you saying that's a good to retain that, or that we should be
Even a
less?
little I was gonna say maybe even a little
Well,
larger,
Really, okay,
but somewhere around there would probably be correct.
so
I'd
it
say,
wouldn't be a smaller dogwood, it would be.
yeah,
or something.
I mean, I've seen places that pick out a couple of species, so if we thought dogwoods were really important aesthetically, environmentally, wildlife value, we wanna say any tree over 25 inches and dogwoods over 10 inches. I've seen
Okay.
that done before too. Or,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Native American dogwoods.
Ordinance already yet. So is it not just the Cornus floridia, not just the, not like
The
the Cornus
Japanese.
pusa or the,
Yeah.
or
So-
Cornus floridia or Cornus moss, but I seriously doubt
Yeah.
we're gonna find a Cornus moss that's anywhere near that.
Yeah, the native one, we'll say.
Well, so that seems like the kind of thing, though, that you would maintain a list of, rather than it specifically being in the code, that there would be a list of specimen trees, and so that
I
way
don't
you
think
could.
you want to get too detailed on the species with
That's what I'm
that.
saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, either over a certain size, and if there's one or two specific ones, we
That's
feel strongly.
Right.
It attempts
Okay.
to do that now. It just doesn't
Okay.
really offer any extra protection to them.
Right.
A 4-inch dogwood versus a 20-inch dogwood is treated the same.
Right, okay.
So, I do have to leave in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody wants to
Well, the
ask me any final questions.
The next thing was gonna be, permit fees and fines. And, I remember, I thought you had said at a meeting that the $50 permit fee did not cover the actual staff time and cost. But
Sometimes.
at the same time, I
it's
thought you
more
had
than
said that the permit fees shouldn't be punitive or something like, so I was trying to figure out what the right number
Balances.
is, yeah.
People do it different ways. I've seen it done by just measurement. I've seen it done by number of trees. But I don't think
That's what's in the.
$50 should cover you to remove 12 trees.
Okay, because what's in the longer version, the PC version, is $50 for 1 to 5, $100 for 6 to 10, and $500 for over 10.
Yeah, I saw one the other day that was a flat fee per tree plus a per inch too.
Oh.
So it can be any flat fee per tree, a fee
I like
per
that too.
inch, or a combination.
Okay, so,
Flat fee per tree.
You can do a flat fee, just one tree, $50, whatever it may be.
but right now, it's $50 for any
Permit.
number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100 tree. You wanted to clear a whole lot, or
Yeah.
yes, one lot.
Yeah.
Yes, a
I thought
wooded
the-
lot.
I actually thought the lot clearing in our current code was 500.
We never could figure what
Couldn't
that
figure out what
was.
land clearing meant, whether that was,
Well,
yeah.
I went through, when I first
Right.
started here, I went to our city solicitor, and he was like,
All the more reason to get some specificity on
Yeah.
that. But you think, you're suggesting $50 per tree?
I mean, that's a number I can throw out there, sure, $50 a tree, 100 a tree. I mean, it depends on what size trees we're requiring permits for.
So, you know, I forgot the man's name that has that acre property between Hennepin and Columbia. So let's just say he subdivides, I mean, it's all wooded, those are.
Right, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it
Well, and it
costs
should
you-
be, they shouldn't be clearing that.
No, but I think we have
No,
to
but
be,
if he wants to sell it,
we have to be careful because we
Right.
can impact property values
Right.
yeah.
and lot value. And, you know, people own a piece of property and it's a balance between a disincentive to take out trees and harming somebody's property value. So we have
Correct.
to be conscious of that.
That's a good point too.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a legal issue that could come up and we end up in lawsuits over this kind of thing.
I mean, we
Well,
also
and it does have to be, I mean,
Right.
I've always thought the permit fee should be reasonable, but they should also cover staff time. That's
Yes.
why
Yes.
if the $50 is too low, then we need
Maybe
to.
maybe
but-
like 250 to 500, I think is a reasonable amount.
Yeah,
That won't impede
Well,
up
and that's
to
what's
maybe
in
like
here.
$500 up to 7 trees or 5 trees or something. So it's $100, you know, a tree or something like
mean,
that.
50 seems too low.
too low.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
500 seems, and you can always readdress this every 3 years when increased, you know, from 500 to.
That's difficult, because
Yeah.
that would have to come
That'd
be
back
a
to
code
city
change.
solicitor.
Yes,
and
Yeah.
yeah,
commissioners.
we have to.
So
that-
can we, do you have any idea, Liz, what this sort of, how this is balancing out for you? How much are you losing or how much, you know?
It's hard to say because
Yeah, sure.
sometimes they're really simple. Like I go somewhere and it's a big dead trees are free. But say I go somewhere and it's a big declining tree and they have plenty of other trees. They don't have to plant anything. That's, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes plus 15 on site, 35. That's half an hour, okay? Because we have to do all the paperwork. Don't forget, we have the intake associated
Right.
with it, and then all the, not just my permit processing, but also the administrative permit processing and the intake of the money, and that is time consuming. But on something like that, $50 is sufficient.
Right.
on something where I go out and there's 30 trees on the lot and I have to measure them all and then I have to identify all the species. If they have a survey, I have to correct and handwrite on there the condition of all the trees, the species of all the trees, the size of all the trees. I could be on site for 40 minutes doing that.
That's why.
Then they have to have a planting plan. Then I have to correct the planting. Let's say, then they argue with me over the planting plan.
Sure,
Then I
sure.
have to correct the planting plan 3 times. Like,
So that's why
so
that
some people
the
it's,
escalation makes sense. I think
Yeah, you're right.
a base
That's what's
fee
good.
per tree plus an escalation per caliber.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
all right, want to talk about fines?
Yeah, well, the only thing, actually mitigation,
Mhm.
because in the law oversight, they had made it a flat 600, and I know every discussion this committee has had before over the last year has been way too low, way too low, way too low. The longer planning commission version has 1,000, I think some people think even that's too low. Do you have a sense of?
It costs me in bulk, the city, currently $600 to get a tree in the ground if it's not a
That's why they put
specialty
600.
species.
Right,
So that's
Okay.
just the break even.
yeah.
And that's not watering,
Yeah.
establishment. I mean, you could maybe double that cost to get a
You
tree
have to consider
established.
all of that has to be considered.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
right.
all part of the cost.
But at the same time, we can't be charging them, if our true costs are $10.50 a tree, we can't be charging them $3,000.
Okay,
So-
well, that's what I wondered,
It needs to
because,
be-
because I know a lot of people have been saying that the fees are such that there's the cost of doing business, people are willing to pay the fee to not have a tree because, hey, you know, it's nothing. Even 1,000 is nothing, but you're saying it
It's-
shouldn't be punitive, it
No,
needs to
it-
truly be in lieu.
It needs to truly be in lieu of what the actual cost at the actual value of the tree is,
Right.
right?
But
So-
value based on replacing it, or value based on things like?
Well, how much time do you have? There's a whole degree
Yeah.
accreditation
I know,
program on
yeah.
plant appraisal, so
Right, exactly.
I think,
Impact on environment,
You're right.
Yes.
climate change.
Absolutely, I mean.
no, you're right.
How do we measure all of that?
I think you
Exactly.
don't. I think
Yeah.
you go replacement and establishment cost, and that's
Okay.
hard to argue because it's very tangible.
Well,
So-
could you do something like, you take the cost of of a typical, say, 2 to 2.5 inch caliber tree and multiply it by 2?
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically how.
Establishment.
And so that would include the planting costs and potential replacement. I mean, that's a pretty standard way of.
Yeah, I saw I was on a webinar the other day, and it was the urban forestry from San Francisco and Atlanta, and one of them said with watering, planting, mulching, maintenance, they had the true establishment, before you even prune the tree, the true establishment cost for them was about, I think like somewhere in that $10.50, $1100 range.
Yeah, so that would be about right,
That's-
because
yeah.
I mean, you would take the cost of the tree, you'd either multiply it by 2 or multiply it by 3, depending on, depending on.
Yeah, that's about what because it varies. Like in San Fran, they're watering a lot, but they have in-house labor, so it costs only a few bucks to water the tree.
Right.
You know, where you're contracting it out, it costs a little bit more.
Well, so since you had said 600 represented about the planning, and if we were to double that, should we just make it 1,200 then?
I think somewhere around 1,000's right.
Okay,
So
all
whether
right.
it's 1,000, 1,200, 1,150, 950, what's the difference between 950 and 1,000? It's like a
Well,
marketing
1,000's
one.
what's in the-
Well, I'm
what's
gonna
in
say
the-
it's like marketing 101, why things are $1.95 instead of $2 or
Right, yeah,
$9.90
yeah.
instead of 10. So,
I don't know that people are thinking that way. in
Yeah.
this-
yeah, all right.
for this.
Thank you very much,
But I
I
will
really
say
appreciate
They were
it.
great, thanks.
And actually, I think if,
See everyone next month.
Yeah, thanks, Liz.
See you, Liz.
Thank you.
okay, so if,
Come by 518 Newcastle, we're planting the trees today.
I love the hedge.
518, that's,
518 Newcastle.
so that's
And
not,
what time?
that's Sturgis?
So
That's not
it's
Sturgis?
Right, it's not Sturgis's house, it's, all the way, it's the Sturgis's house, and then there's 1, 2, 3, like 3 houses.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
like you know where Bunky lives?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right next door to Bunky.
Okay.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
next-
okay, yeah,
it's
yeah.
next door to
Great
Bunky?
house.
Yeah,
That's-
okay.
that's- yeah.
Oh, where there's that big swimming pool.
Yeah, where there's the
Yes.
swimming pool.
Yeah.
We took out a bunch of the concrete,
Oh.
and there are 6 new trees going in.
Oh, that's good, that's great to hear.
Very nice.
5 tulip poplars and columnar tulip poplars and a red bud, all like 2.5 to 3 inch tall.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great. That's great.
But they've kept the big pool there?
They
and
kept the
it's
pool, we
surrounded?
took out a bunch of the concrete.
Nice.
And I think
that's
we're gonna
great.
take out more of the concrete in another phase of the project.
That's wonderful.
And we've got a hornbeam hedge around it, and then a hedge in front, and a hornbeam hedge in
nice,
front.
nice.
So,
That's great. Well, okay, I think we're sort of getting close to our hour and a half anyway. I think we've made progress.
Yes,
Do you all think?
definitely.
So I'm gonna incorporate this. I also gotta talk to building and licensing about some of those variance things and tree protection things and that. So I've got some work to do between now and the next one. But maybe we can, but seriously, if you have comments about anything else in it at all, please send it, because we're gonna, you know, there are many other issues. They're just, you know, we can't always talk about them in a big group. A couple things in terms of, well, before we even get to scheduling the next meeting, just in the last 24 hours, I've come across or heard about 3 articles that just sound as though they are wonderful and inspirational. One of them is this one from the Wall Street Journal that Joan brought in this morning on the heat island effect and how New York City is beating the heat island effect, which I think is an important variable here too. And she was saying you can get an electronic copy of that, right? Then yesterday, Elise, who's in New York City, was at Madison Square Park, where they have an amazing new program of tree planting. And I'm going to send, and she sent a link about it and some photographs from it, so I'm going to send that out. And then Andrea told me about this Casey Trees article that you found,
Yes.
right?
Yes. This is about oaks and species that DC is giving rebates if you plant the following list of oaks. And I just,
posted a couple weeks ago?
no.
Article.
Oh, there was, yes, there was,
Remember
there
that
was an article on the
post?
post about oaks. Yes, it was the best tree to plant if you only plant one.
Oh, right,
Absolutely.
exactly. Oh, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
that was a good one.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that was a great one.
So this is a list, I had no idea that there were
so
so
many.
many different kinds of oaks.
Oh, yeah.
So I can give you this if you, or do you want me, I can
Well,
send you.
yeah, what I was gonna say is if you can get all this stuff
Yeah.
electronically, I was just gonna
Yeah.
share it with you,
Sure,
just as a
will
way
do.
of, you know,
Yes.
continuing education, because it sounds great.
And quick question, is there a way that in marketing this team, this committee, and also for public interest, is there a way that we can make these articles available to people
Well,
who otherwise wouldn't?
we could probably put them on the city website. We would, I think, wanna monitor that pretty carefully. In other words, to not overload it, but
Right.
to include some and then, you know, maybe
Take
take
them
those down, add others or whatever,
Keep them
yeah.
up 6 months.
You know, and that's another thing that should go, and I
Mhm.
should talk to Lynn Cohn about
Yeah.
about updating that part of the website, but then also promoting it through a newsletter, saying, hey, the tree section on the website has been updated, and here's some new material, yeah.
Good idea.
Excellent, yeah. In terms of the next meeting, I actually may have a conflict, let me look at the calendar. I may have a conflict with that second Friday in July. And I'm thinking, and we did this once before, we were able to move to the third Friday. Is that a possibility for you all? It would,
The 16th?
it would mean it would be the 16th instead of the 9th. And I don't think there's anything in the morning of the 16th of July, is there?
I would have to check.
Okay, yeah, there hadn't been, let me, okay, assuming it's available, is that an okay date for everybody? To do it the 16th instead of the 9th?
Yes.
it's
For me.
definitely better than the 9th.
Okay, yeah, great. Good, yeah, okay, well, why don't, I'll confirm and with Ann before finalizing that, but let's think of that'll probably be our next meeting. Okay, any comments?
Is the next meeting for 1.5 hours or a longer?
I would say probably, depending on the agenda, it may be less than that. I certainly like to keep it at that as a maximum. But,
Okay.
depending on how much of the ordinance stuff we have left, but remember also Liz had said we have to finalize the tree priorities.
Right.
Next time too, so that might be
I
some
have
discussion.
2 minutes to get to my car because my meter will expire on the side.
All the more reason to be aware of the timing. Okay, so are there any other,
This was a great meeting, thank you.
Good.
thank
Very
you
good.
all.
It's
for all
very- I
being here.
think it was, wonder how much had to do with it that we're all in person. It's easier to have
Oh,
a
yeah, I think-
conversation.
I think so. I think so.
It is.